So the first case study is actually the first client that Climate Earth ever had. It's a playground company called Playworld. And they basically buy aluminum and steel and different kinds of coated rope. They weld it and they paint it and they put together these final playground systems. And after we did their analysis, we found that really the bulk of their emissions were in their supply chain. So 90% of their emissions were in the stuff that they were buying, which was interesting because they hired us thinking that this scope 1 and 2 part would be the big hitter and that we'd end up playing with their manufacturing process to reduce emissions. And instead, it became more of a question of, can we change the design of our products by using less or different types of materials to change our total footprint? So of course the question was, where do we focus? And we said, well, you should focus on scope 3 because that's where your biggest part of your footprint is. And we could break out what is it within scope 3 that's important. And we saw steel and plastic and to some degree aluminum were the biggest part of their footprint. And they came back to us a few months later, a few months after we did this analysis, and they wanted to pay for a pretty expensive analysis of recycled paint. They said, somebody came to us and said, you know, they can give us recycled paint and it's supposed to be greener and we want you to do an analysis of whether it's worth us switching over to this other paint. And we said, wait a minute, look at your results here. Where's paint? It's way over here. It's just not going to affect your total footprint that much. Even if you get it down to half of what it is now by using recycled paint or 10%, it's just not important to your footprint, and it's probably not worth paying us a bunch of money to do an analysis of recycled paint when it doesn't affect your total bottom line carbon footprint very much. The work we did with them also allowed us to make comparisons of different types of playgrounds that they were producing. So on the left, you see kind of the traditional type of playground that you've probably all seen in parks around San Francisco or wherever you live in the Bay Area or elsewhere. And on the right is kind of a new type of playground that they actually were already building at Playworld before Climate Earth came and started working with them. But once they did the analysis with us, they realized that this playground on the right had half the greenhouse gas emissions of the one on the left, and they could start marketing it as a greener product alternative, and they could, just by selling more of this product versus the product on our left, they could reduce their total greenhouse gas emissions per dollar of revenue, which is a really exciting thing to discover. You just have to figure out where your opportunities are and market those products as such. This was a fun project. We had lots of great discoveries. It only took us a few months to find out all the things that I just showed you, kind of a hotspots analysis that allowed us to avoid a costly assessment of paint, product differentiation, and we didn't need to do the in-depth manufacturing analysis because really what mattered was everything throughout the supply chain. The second case study that I'll tell you about is more recent. We've been working with a company called Webcor, and they recently have been working on the San Francisco PUC building. And they were really interested in using this kind of top-down, iterative, hybrid life cycle assessment method, the fuzzy helmet refined by the clear face helmet. And they also wanted to, before they built a building, they wanted to be able to do predictive LCA, which is perfect for this system because they come up with cost estimates beforehand that we can link through our system and then do greenhouse gas estimates. So it's really ideal. And they were also interested in a supplier-specific database so that they could do specific analysis of their different suppliers and make decisions to reduce the greenhouse gas footprint of buildings before they're built. Here's an example of how this works. We're interested in the San Francisco PUC building, and by doing kind of a comprehensive analysis using their cost estimates, we could figure out that there's kind of 4 key pieces to the carbon footprint of a building. There's the site work, there's the skin of the structure, there's the actual structure, the steel and the concrete that hold up the building, and then there's all the interior stuff that's around us right now. And from doing this analysis, we found out that the structure was the biggest part of the carbon footprint, and that's where we really wanted to focus on design reductions and supplier decision-making. So once we knew the structure was the biggest part, we could dig into that. Steel, concrete, and wood are the biggest parts of a structure, and from our analysis, we could see that concrete was the biggest part of the San Francisco PUC building's carbon footprint. So again, this gave us the opportunity then to go to the concrete suppliers and get additional information, and we worked with a company called Central Concrete, and they've been doing a lot of research on how to take cement, which is the most carbon-intensive part of concrete, out of the concrete and use things like fly ash to replace the cement to reduce the carbon footprint. And we were able to do different footprints, and the result is by working with the suppliers and figuring out what was important, 50% of the emissions from the concrete were saved, just by coming up with identifying that as a key part of the building, and then focusing on cement reduction and new design and working with the supplier. And this is really exciting. I did a quick estimate. It's equivalent to saving annual electricity and natural gas for 600 homes. And this is based on PG&E electricity and natural gas values. So this was fun, and we hope that we will have equivalently exciting results from working with PG&E on this project. Conclusions. We're really striving for reducing energy use in California, increasing supplier efficiency in the ways that I just talked about, greener procurement, identification and use of best practices by working with suppliers and by doing our own research about what people are doing. Innovation is critical, and really the key strength of this top-down hybrid approach is prioritization, figuring out what matters and where we can really effectively use our time to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and be creative and innovative and greener. Thank you very much.